Pursuivants, heralds, kings of arms from the College of Arms and the Lord Lion, responsible for state ceremonial, leading this part of the procession onto the mall. The Countess of Wessex and the Duchess of Sussex following on behind the Queen Consort and the Princess of Wales with her 2 children, as the Queen passes down the Mall for the last time. So often people who visited London suddenly saw a sight of the late Queen's motorcade coming down and waved like mad to see her pass by. But now a family in mourning follow the last journey down this great processional route. The Queen passes her two proud parents, watching from the side of the mall. Neither could have known what a great queen their daughter would be. When King George VI came unintentionally to the throne on the abdication of his elder brother, the two proud parents watch as the Queen goes by. Representatives of the armed forces of the Queen's realms following the Royal Marines, and before the cavalry of the Blues and Royals. These horses always captured the Queen's interest when they passed by, as she kept across all the news from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and her other nations and their armed forces. seeing the view coming up Constitution Hill to Hyde Park Corner and Wellington Arch, where the procession will disperse, leaving that final moment when the Queen will be lifted from the gun carriage and placed in the state hearse. The Honourable Artillery Company leading this part of the parade as the different sections open out and the crowd looks on. The Queen is preceded by her household, Master of the Household, Vice Admiral Sir Tony Johnson Burt, her private secretary, Sir Edward Young, and Mr. Matt McGee following, and behind the palace steward. During the Platinum Jubilee, the Queen launched the Canopy Appeal to raise money for the planting of trees. The King has announced that he would like that to continue in memory of the late Queen to next year as a chance to further cover the Commonwealth with trees to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and her reign. The Duke of Norfolk, the Earl Marshal, has organised this state occasion and is responsible for the planning of a coming coronation.
At Wellington Arch, the troops who have been in the procession form up a guard for the Sovereign for the final salute as she leaves London. The state gun carriage will convey the Queen round the Victoria Memorial and past her Buckingham Palace for the last time. The winged Statue of Victory above Queen Victoria, catching the sun here, but we could perhaps recall the Queen's last appearance on that balcony on the 5th of June this year, and cast our minds further back to her first appearance on that balcony. It was her grandfather's silver jubilee
on the 6th of May 1935. As Big Ben from the Elizabeth Tower and the minute gun carries on. Lined along the front of Buckingham Palace, every member of Her Majesty's household. People who, in all sorts of degrees, served her in different ways. As her procession passes, two of her staff lead the way. Her two pages, Paul Wybrew and Barry Mitford. Paul Wybrew, we remember when the Queen was introduced to James Bond at the Olympics, and also Barry Mitford, who was present when Paddington Bear had tea with the Queen. No sovereign reigned from the headquarters of Buckingham Palace for longer than Elizabeth II. She takes leave and passes by the garden wall inside which so often she and her late husband, Prince Philip, welcomed thousands upon thousands for garden parties each year as she heads down Constitution Hill. The Queen's own household passing by again, including her pages, her keeper of the privy purse, private secretaries, controller of the Lord Chamberlain's office. The King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery firing the minute gun as Big Ben joins in replying. And from the moment the Queen left Balmoral Castle those days ago, it seems the sun has shone on her journey, as it does passing under the trees here on Constitution Hill, towards her final point in this procession, Wellington Arch. Wellington Arch awaits the arrival of the late Queen, and to its left, at the base, wait the Royal Navy, who will be the piping party from His Majesty's Naval Base Portsmouth, Devonport, HMS Raleigh, and HMS Iron Duke, who, when the time is right, will pipe the still. Just behind the massed armed forces, a modern building stands where 145 Piccadilly once was the home of the young Princess Elizabeth and her sister, Princess Margaret Rhodes. And they lived there with their parents, the Duke and Duchess of York. And it was from there that the princess's father went to become king in 1936. A change that altered her whole life. The procession finally leaving Constitution Hill and the great Commonwealth War Memorial, with references to the nations who have helped to maintain peace from tyranny. The procession will halt, and the still will be sounded.
The sailors' job is done. Their haul of the state gun carriage from Westminster Abbey to Wellington Arch now completed. Her Majesty's coffin will be placed in the state hearse. Her journey to Windsor is about to begin.
Members of the royal family now gather together in order to witness this moment when the piping party call attention to the side. The bearer party and the bodyguards march on. Bearer party party will move themselves to the rear of this procession. For the Prince and Princess of Wales to have their eldest two children, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, watching as the bodyguards who've looked after the Queen on this journey step aside. The bearer party from the Queen's Company, 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards, marching in to take up the Sovereign, who was their company commander. And the Queen's former equerries who've acted as pallbearers and will do so also at Windsor, currently moving into position close to the royal family. The piping party saluting the side to give the Navy's final salute as 142 ratings pull away with the state gun carriage, leaving the bearer party ready to place Elizabeth II in the state hearse. with a final royal salute to Elizabeth II. The state hearse will draw her away from her capital city and start her journey to Windsor Castle. The royal cars will come forward, members of the royal family will join them as a sister salutes her brother there. It will be for the Princess Royal and her husband, Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence, to once again escort the Queen on her journey. Garrison Sergeant Major steps out of the way, and to Elizabeth II. A royal salute and farewell from London.
The national anthem is played as the bells of Westminster Abbey are rung fully muffled. This will live long in the memory. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of the Queen watching her coffin gently placed in the state hearse. Princess Charlotte, a 7-year-old child, trying to absorb this day. She gazed out of the window as she was driven through London at the people, their patience paid off. The parade before them, something not seen in generations. Past the cenotaph, site of remembrance, across the gravel of Horse Guards Parade, and past the office, Buckingham Palace. Those people, that crowd, now applaud their Queen. passing the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment. The flowers thrown, the cheers of thanks to the duty served. As the people pay tribute to this remarkable woman.
London has played its part in the start of this final journey for a truly remarkable monarch. And for many, the last 10 days, it's been hard to take it all in. And now, after the world leaders, the dignitaries have been able to pay their respects here at Westminster Abbey, is now once again an opportunity for the thousands of people who've waited so patiently, lining this route to say their own goodbyes, throwing flowers into the road and cheering. There is a likeness to this moment, a celebration of a life well lived after the solemnity that we saw at Westminster Abbey. An incredibly dignified and emotional service that really represented every facet of her life and everything that really mattered to her.
There is an enveloping experience of sound now and throughout, contrasting the intensity of the silence we saw in Westminster Hall.
And it began really with the massed pipes and drums as they arrived here at Westminster Abbey, really setting the tone for this military spectacle, the like of which many of us have never seen and are unlikely to ever see again.
Her Majesty, now His Majesty's Lord Lieutenants were invited to the funeral, including Peaches Golding, Lord Lieutenant of Bristol. An extraordinary experience for everyone there and watching now.
It really was, and there were people from all around the United Kingdom. I ran into so many people that had come from long distances just to be able to pay their last respects to Her late Majesty, for all of the service, for all of her commitment, for the family of nations, the Commonwealth, the world. She was absolutely incredible, and everyone that could get to London wanted to be here.
And the draw, as you say, of royal families from around the world, heads of state, leaders of the realms too. It is hard to imagine anybody else who would bring such a congregation together.
And it's such a contrast between the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebration of Thanksgiving, where we had lots of members of the royal family, lots of politicians and leaders, but today has been on a totally different standard. It has been so moving, so emotional, so beautiful.
And continues to be, passing the Royal Albert Hall, the landmarks of her reign and her forebears as well. In the service though, what stood out for you? What was the moment which captured Her Majesty?
There were lots of references, of course, to Her Majesty, duty and service in the songs that were chosen, in the lessons that were read. The sermon captured it wonderfully. You remember when she said, "We will meet again" at the end of, well, at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And to echo that and to have built layer upon layer of that sentiment through the readings was absolutely incredible. But there also were two new pieces of music that were written specifically for this service, and they were beautiful. One was the second of the two. The voices at the end almost sounded like that peal of bells behind us, just ringing through the changes, and it was gorgeous.
On the streets now we're hearing people cheering, obviously celebrating Her Majesty's life as we did when we were here for the Platinum Jubilee 3 months ago. What was the atmosphere like inside the Abbey? Was it solemn?
It was. It is sort of reminiscent almost of the queues for the lying in state, because beforehand you made acquaintances with the people that were sitting around you, and they came from a range of walks of life, which was really lovely. But when the service started and the organ music kicked in, we all just got very, very, very quiet. And we watched processions coming in, but when that coffin draped in the standard with the sparkling jewels of the crown and the orb and the scepter there, we knew we were at someplace very, very special. Witnessing something we'll never, ever witness again.
And as you looked at those famous faces invited, the Prime Minister of Canada, the President of America, those leaders from around the world, what was their reaction to being there and making this journey?
Well, no one does pageantry and ceremonial in the way that the British do. And I think everyone gets swept up in that moment. The military, the precision, the costumes, it is just creating an atmosphere that you can almost drink in. No one